Hello and welcome to Health Innovators. I'm your host, Jonah Comstock. I'm joined today by Matt Dugan, Director and Head of Innovation for Digital Incubation and Innovation at Novo Nordisk. We're going to talk a little bit about what you do over at Novo Nordisk and about more broadly digital innovation, managing change, and how to really bring that to a large pharma company and move forward with the times, which is something I think everyone is kind of working on right now. But just to start out, tell me a little bit about the work you do with the Innovation Garage at Novo Nordisk.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jonah, and thanks a lot for the opportunity to join your session today and share what we're doing in Novo Nordisk. So, quick background: I think a lot of people might be familiar with Novo Nordisk, and I often get the chance to introduce Novo to digital groups, and I always say we're an old pharma company and we're on a digital transformation journey. But the more and more that I talk about this kind of intro, it sounds that most pharma companies of a certain size are quite old, and we're also, many of us are on digital transformation journeys. But at Novo, we're really proud of our history. We're coming up on 100 years, and we've really been founded on innovation, discovering science, breakthrough molecules, and bringing those kind of discoveries to patients. For the past couple of years, we've also started to be exploring a new kind of exploration and a new kind of value that we can generate for our end customers, and that's in the digital space. I head up an area that's a part of our broader digital effort called the Innovation Garage, where we have a few departments from internal consulting units, open innovation and partnering, and our strategy and innovation hubs that are distributed around our key markets.
So some of that involves internal innovation. Some of it involves looking outside at Novo Nordisk for partners in the startup world, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I get the chance to kind of work across the innovation spectrum, maybe a little bit more focused on partnerships. So I don't have too many software developers and things, and specifically in my area, but I get to work really closely with some of the other teams where we have large software development capabilities and kind of in-house tech muscle. Yeah, we're kind of a consulting strategy and partnerships unit.
Can you give me an example of something that you've worked on or are working on that you think is kind of emblematic or shows off what you do well?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a very kind of corporate-y thing, and kind of one of the core deliverables for my work, and what we're really focused on is our corporate digital strategy. And then there are things that are more specific and tangible, like some of the cool pilots and exciting engagements that we're running. So I'll try to touch on both. So one of the big things that we're excited about is that at the end of last year, we got our first kind of corporate across the full value chain digital strategy endorsed by our senior leadership in the company. And on a high level, we have kind of summarized what we want to do around optimize, augment, and explore. We want to optimize our value chain to kind of become a pharma company of the future, leverage emerging technologies and automation and everything to really operate like the way a pharma company should in the coming years. Then we also want to start to augment our products, augment these breakthrough molecules that I mentioned earlier, so they kind of get combined together with digital solutions. We have a lot of good work that's already underway and also already hitting some of the markets. So really excited to dig into that as well. But there's also opportunities in healthcare that are really starting to emerge and get really exciting. So we're starting to explore what independent value creation might look like in the digital space. So, and I think the best, more concrete representation of that is we have a lot of opportunities, but it's really for us right now as a company that's founded as a diabetes company and grown into treating cardiometabolic disease. We're starting to explore what a sustainable prevention business might look like. And that's where digital has a really interesting and exciting role to play, and something that we're excited to dig into more, and also where we're starting to leverage that partnership angle. So we're working with a number of interesting partners in the space to look at building relationships with consumers to be able to provide them services that might offer them treatment for one condition like a mental well-being that might down the line benefit them in preventing obesity, or helping them better understand their risk levels through continuous monitoring. So lots of exciting work kind of going on in that space. But things are really exciting across the value chain. Everything from AI for drug discovery to new ways to do clinical trials. And then, of course, a lot of really exciting new things that are getting in the hands of patients and physicians.
You guys launched a new company-wide digital strategy recently, right?
Yep.
So is this all sort of part of that, or tell me a little bit about, what that entails and why now, and what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of optimize, augment, explore, that's the foundation of our corporate digital strategy. And it can seem a bit high level, but of course it does go across our full value chain, and it's very descriptive of where do we see the opportunities. When we used to talk about digital some years ago, it was very focused on automation and kind of digitizing processes. And what I'm excited about our strategy is that it starts to really focus on the patient, the customer needs that we have, not just the ones that we have today, where we're doing a lot of work and things for our current portfolio, but also looking a little bit into the future. One terminology that we're kind of excited to start to work with, and I often get asked, where are we going with the digital strategy? What is the end state? And I think it's really to build upon the foundation that we have as a company that drives change in cardiometabolic disease, but amplify it to kind of catch up with the rest of our lives, so that the experience of kind of working with the Novo Nordisk products as an end user, as a patient, is on par with how you might receive media or everything else that has been transformed. And it's kind of moving more towards holistic care. We have this terminology that we're excited about that's really in that augmenting our molecule space, called 5D. So that's, and it's always easy to remember because all the letters, they start with D, right? So it's drugs, devices, digital, diagnostics, and data all integrated together to actually get to that holistic care space. And when we talk about them overall, I can kind of run through them relatively quickly. So drugs, that's of course the molecule, that's our foundation. We're really strong there. And then the devices, that's we work with insulin and injectable medications. So that's kind of the plastics, the needles, but also sometimes we're starting to integrate connectivity into that. So having those devices start to become smart pens that can communicate with apps and your physician as well. Then, of course, diagnostics. When we talk about diabetes and obesity and some of the other conditions we work with, you can't talk about it without talking about the challenges of awareness in diagnostics and access to care. So that's becoming a central piece of what we talk about when we mean digital and holistic care. And then the digital and data, that's really the connectors across. So we will always look forward to launching products together with robust digital solutions that leverage data across the experience.
So you sort of mentioned earlier a little bit about chronic condition management as sort of a key area here. You used the term sustainable prevention. First of all, so what does that mean? Break that down for me a little bit. But also, I'd love to hear a little bit about this, applied to conditions like diabetes, where it's already a condition that the patient has to sort of constantly manage, and digital is so well positioned to help make that better and make that easier. Yeah.
So I think I'll start with the diabetes space because it's really, really mature, right? So if you kind of look on the App Store and you search for diabetes, you're going to find hundreds, maybe thousands of apps. And that's because also the problem is so large. So there's a lot of things that diabetics, both type 1 and type 2 diabetics, are asked to manage in their everyday life when they get diagnosed with the condition. And digital obviously can play and is playing a big role in supporting people in that, both from kind of maybe some of the obvious things like dosage reminders, reminding people to take their medication, to some of the maybe more complicated task of trying to titrate. So calculating the dosage that is not quite as straightforward as is with other conditions, where it might be more integrated with the food that you eat, the exercise that you've done, other measurements that you have taken. So diabetes management is really an ecosystem centered around the patient that the physician kind of orchestrates a bit. and data is the connector there. So the role that we're playing, I think, is bringing forward the data coming from the pen. So we talked about kind of the smart pens earlier. So we're trying to add in connectivity to the injectable devices so that data can then feed into this robust ecosystem of partners that are already being leveraged by patients, and help them better manage their disease, have better conversations with their physician, and ultimately receive better outcomes in their treatment. So that's kind of the diabetes space. And then if we go over to prevention, right? So what is sustainable prevention? It sounds like kind of a little bit of a strange terminology. And I think when coming from a corporate and a pharma perspective, prevention sometimes can look like a social responsibility. That we treat a disease and we should have a responsibility. We should be responsible for also working to prevent it. I think that's very true, but we're also starting to think about prevention as a complementary business unit, right? Where it can stand on its own and it's not just propped up by one-time funding. It can be something that can exist on its own and also grow with the demand. So a lot of things in the prevention space, I mean, you could in theory, let's take diagnostics. You could diagnose everybody that has a condition if everybody had a physician and a care team surrounded around them. But that's not very sustainable because that's so resource intensive that everyone would have to have a 7-person, physician chasing you and telling you to exercise and telling you to take measurements every day. But digital, we think, can play a role there that can start to make some of these really well-founded aspirations of preventing a chronic cardiometabolic disease and turn it into a potential big part of our future.
Kind of a passive monitoring that also, gives some benefit to the person. So you're not just asking them to engage in proactive prevention all the time, which is not something patients are particularly interested in, right?
I think it's one of the biggest challenges that exist in healthcare, and it's we're not the first people to talk about it, right? Just like there's hundreds or thousands of apps out there for diabetes management, there's arguably hundreds of thousands of apps that could be placed into a prevention bucket, and it's something that hasn't been cracked, and is not something that probably we'll be able to do solely on our own. We're going to have to explore a lot of different approaches, work together with a lot of different partners, and try a lot of different things. And that's really where that startup programs come into play for us, and where we've seen that kind of initial success. Because let's say that we wanted to explore a completely different business model in prevention. It could take us a very long time as a relatively large corporate to be able to build the business case, get the resources together, then sell it internally. But if we're able to find a startup that's doing something somewhat similar, somewhat close, we can start to work together with them in a much more rapid pace, generate learnings that both benefit them and also us, and hopefully get closer to solving some of these problems of creating a sustainable prevention business.
Yes, and you've given me a great segue because I wanted to talk a little bit about the startup piece. And, as a pharma, finding startups you can work with, working with them, teaching them what they need to know about pharma and keeping within compliance. I mean, there's a lot of pieces there. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about some of the challenges you've overcome, some of the things you've learned when it comes to integrating those two worlds of tech and pharma.
I think there's kind of the tech world and pharma, and I think the last month or so, now we're kind of coming towards the end of July, but it's almost been this like mini golden age for tech companies announcing strategies and ambitious goals and being a little bit more transparent. So lots of really impressive announcements coming from the likes of Apple and Amazon and even Google as well. So it's clear that tech is also starting to pay attention to healthcare continuingly, as they have done for the past few years. And we're really excited to see where that goes and build a collaboration in that space. I think its regulations, of course, exist. So it's not something that can be avoided. I think there's cultural differences where when you have kind of growth oriented industries like technology, where people look at regulations as opportunities and potentially things to be challenged. And then in pharma, we really embrace regulations and quality standards, because that's what helps us make sure that we keep the patient at the center and we protect the end product and the quality remains high. I think those worlds, they're merging together, and I think there's going to be a nice balance, but there's no aspiration of kind of going around regulations or anything in that space. I think we need to continue to work together across kind of the ecosystem. What I think is also interesting is looking at how startups kind of fit into corporates. And a lot of times those startups have a culture that is closer to technology, where it's kind of try, fail, and iterate. And I think really high performing startups are able to do that without challenging any issues in the regulatory side. So that's not a real concern. What's probably the bigger risk for us, or the bigger learning for us in this space, is that startups, they have really, really high risk tolerance. So everything is an opportunity, right? So they want to go and try one business model, they will go try a business model for a few months, and then they'll pivot and try something else. In a corporate setting, when we try one business model, we're set on that for quite some time, and it's not like we're just going to change one the other day and then go try something else. So there's an agility that we can really benefit from the startup context. I think there's also, we bring a lot to the table when we talk about partnerships. And I think sometimes when you spend your whole career in corporates, everybody is really, really excited about startup founders, and they are amazing. The passion that they talk about their challenges and how focused they are on solving a particular challenge that they're working with. But also corporates have a lot of value to bring to the startups as well. And we have a foundation, we have a strong reach, we have an understanding of the ecosystem, lots of relationships, we have access to data. So I think the two worlds, they meet together quite well. And the big thing that we always try to keep is that we want to retain what makes both of these groups great, right? So we want to keep startups agile, we want to keep them nimble, we want to keep them as great people to work with. And we also want to keep the corporate strong, protect the mothership, and continue to keep our ability to scale, instead of just trying to push the two together, because you water down both and then it's not exciting anymore.
Absolutely. So I feel like broadly, the industry has been on a real journey for the last many years, let's say 15, 20 years, of sort of changing how we think about pharma companies from being, drug companies, molecule companies, to really being treatment therapy companies, and wherever that takes us, right? Vis-a-vis digital therapeutics, add-on digital. And so I'm curious, as a part of this big pharma company who's focused on this and with this new strategy, do you really feel like that that shift has arrived, has happened, both at Novo Nordisk in particular, and also as you look across to your colleagues at other companies and how they're dealing with this? I mean, where are we with sort of pharma really embracing digital, not just as an add-on, nice to have experiment lab, but as a real part of sort of what a pharma company is and does? Yeah.
I think from a Novo Nordisk perspective, digital has kind of gone through a few iterations, where in the beginning it was kind of, the people talking in the corner, hey, we should be doing this. Then it was kind of a project that was happening. Now it's being accepted and embraced at a corporate level, to where we're getting a lot of momentum and things. It's a really exciting time to be there. I think we are still working towards where digital and the molecule kind of get more intertwined, because they're still somewhat separate, right? There's the digital products we have, the goals that they're trying to achieve. There's also the molecule and the science and the pharmaceutical product. They work together really, really smoothly, but they're not fully integrated. And I think when we start to look at the overall value that we provide, they're quite similar, and we'll get there. But it's a transformation. I mean, Novo Nordisk, we have over 45,000 employees. Not all of them work in digital, right? But we all try to drive change in diabetes and obesity and other serious chronic diseases. So we all have kind of the same goals. In some ways, I actually feel like we are really lucky, because we work for a company where our diseases can be very linked together. So our path towards holistic care and building solutions that can support our patients is really clear. talking to peers that work in digital units and other pharma companies that might be more portfolio, where they have therapy areas that are some quite different from each other. It can be harder to see the parallels and the value it captures. So I think our strategy has made it really clear that there is an opportunity for us to leverage data across our therapy areas, across our value chain, and kind of create a digital engine for a company of the future. I think there's a harder task for some companies that maybe they work in oncology and then they work in consumer health and then something else. So it can be a little bit trickier, but of course, also very doable.
So I've got a final question for you, but before I get to that, I just wanted to ask you if there's anything you're excited about that you want to talk about we haven't yet, or anything we maybe touched on that you want to get in deeper or emphasize a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever we get the chance to talk externally, I always say that it's a really special time to work in pharma and in healthcare and in digital. So people should really start to consider the industry as a path towards kind of the next wave of growth, I think, for digital profiles, digital entrepreneurs, and people that are looking to really have a significant impact. So hopefully people can start to consider that. And then from a completely unbiased personal perspective, I think Novo Nordisk is maybe the best option to do that because we have a really bold strategy. So we have lots of jobs and openings. So we're really keen to find new colleagues to work with and help us on the digital agenda. Personally, from my team and from my area, we're launching innovation hubs in a few key markets. So we're doing some exciting recruitment to drive partnerships together with the local teams in a few markets in China, UK, Germany, Israel, and Brazil for right now, and some more coming in the near future. So we're really keen to talk to profiles that would be interested in joining the mission and start to tackle some of these big challenges together.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Matt. As a final question, I'll let you choose your own adventure a little bit here. I'm going to ask you to give some advice to our viewers, either to pharma folks maybe on embracing this digital innovation and working with startups, or if you have advice for startups too, because I know you work with them a lot and spend a lot of time kind of teaching them the ropes of the pharma world.
Yeah. I'll try to do both really quickly. Let's see if I can pull it off. Maybe we have another 20 minutes and then we'll see. But yeah, I think for pharmas and things, a lot of what we're trying to do in the digital space requires collaboration, and we already have a lot of great collaborations across. So I think when we try to do things too much ourselves in the silo, like either within our own companies, but also across the industry. So there's a real opportunity and a need for collaboration on some of these bigger missions if we're going to really drive significant change in healthcare that will benefit our end customers. So I think that can be great. I think the other one is it's probably the right time to start talking about digital at a corporate level. You see, there are a lot of like digital momentum around pharma companies. It can be challenging if it stays too much in a functional area. So it's probably the time to start thinking about pharma and pharma companies as where digital and data become a key driver and a key part of the corporate identity of the company. So I think it's time for pharma to think about digital beyond the silo and really across the full value chain and connecting it across. And then I think from startups, you'd be surprised at how approachable pharma companies are. There's lots of opportunities to partnership. I mean, from a Novo Nordisk perspective, we have programs. We're always interested to have conversations and dig into where there might be opportunities to co-create the solutions. So I would just be proactive, seek out opportunities for collaboration, and also realize that the feedback cycles, they might take longer, right? So pharma can take time sometimes to take decisions. We are doing our absolute best to be as agile and lean as possible, but you kind of bear with us and know that we have really, really high interest. We are a process-heavy industry for a good reason.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Matt. This has been super interesting, and look forward to working with you, talking to you again about some of the exciting work you're doing over there.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jonah.